99 missed calls. That was how many times my family tried to reach me 5 days after they left one entire side of my wedding chapel empty. Not 9. Not 19. 99. My mother called. My sister called. My brother-in-law called. Even people from my mother's garden club called. And every single one of them wanted the same thing. Access. Not forgiveness. Not a relationship. Not me. Access. Because 5 days earlier, when I walked down the aisle alone, my mother had decided my marriage was a disgrace. My sister had said she would rather miss her own funeral than watch me marry him. My brother-in-law had called my husband a man with a wrench. But then my husband's face appeared on every news channel in the Midwest. And suddenly, the plumber they were ashamed of was the man everyone wanted to stand beside. So let me tell you exactly how my mother tried to end my marriage before it even began. And how one empty wedding aisle exposed the entire family. My name is Claire Monroe. I was 35 years old when I learned my mother could destroy a wedding with one phone call. Or at least she thought she could. It happened on a Tuesday evening. I was standing in the kitchen of the apartment I had paid for myself with 9 years of structural engineering work. My phone was pressed between my shoulder and my ear. A load calculation report was open on my laptop. A half-eaten bowl of pasta sat on the counter. And my mother was on the line. I told her I was getting married. For 1 second, there was silence. Then she asked one question. What does he do? I smiled before I answered, because I thought she was asking the way mothers ask when they want to know the man who is about to join the family. I thought she might ask where he grew up, how he treated me, whether he made me laugh, whether I felt safe with him, whether I was happy. She asked none of that. So I told her the truth. He started as a plumber. A pipe fitter technically. Now he runs his own water infrastructure company. The line went quiet. 6 full seconds. I counted them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then my mother said the sentence I will hear for the rest of my life. A plumber? Her voice sharpened, like I had placed something dirty on her dining table. You'll disgrace this entire family. Then she hung up. No congratulations. No questions. No pause. Just the click of the line going dead. I stood there with the phone still against my ear. The pasta went cold. The report blurred on the screen. And for a moment, I was not 35 years old. I was 7 again. Standing in my mother's living room. Watching her check the curtains before company arrived. Because in our house, appearances were not decoration. They were survival. 6 months before the wedding, I had brought out my grandmother Faye's veil at my mother's house in Riverdale, Ohio. My mother's house was a split level she decorated like a magazine and maintained like a resume. Every pillow had a purpose. Every framed photo had been selected to tell a story. Every Sunday dinner felt like an audition. And my mother, Diana Monroe, sat at the head of the table like she had earned that chair through combat. In a way, she had. After my father left her for a woman with a lakefront house and a family trust, my mother rebuilt herself out of pure refusal. She refused pity. She refused whispers. She refused to be the woman people lowered their voices around. So she starched tablecloths, joined the garden club, started saying our family has standards, and made sure her daughters understood that marrying well was not a preference. It was proof. My older sister Lillian had already passed the test. 5 years earlier, she married Blake Pierce at Riverdale Country Club. 202 guests. A 7-tier cake. White orchids. A write-up in the local paper. My mother kept the clipping in a silver frame near the hallway mirror. She never said that was the scoreboard. She didn't have to. Everyone knew. So when I opened the cedar box my grandmother Faye had left me and lifted out her wedding veil, I already knew what my mother would measure first. Not the lace. Not the history. Not the fact that my grandmother had hand-stitched it herself. The venue. My mother leaned forward. Her eyes skimmed the yellowed edges, the delicate embroidery, the tiny initials stitched near the temple. FM. Faye Monroe. Then she asked, "Where's the ceremony?" I looked up. The chapel on Sycamore Street. Her mouth tightened. The country club books out 20 months. Lillian leaned over from her chair, phone in hand, bracelet sliding down her wrist. I can send you photos from mine for inspiration. I ran my thumb over the lace. There was a tiny line of stitching along the seam that I couldn't quite read. Something hidden. Something almost invisible. My grandmother had married a man who dug wells for a living. She stayed with him 49 years. And there I was, holding her veil at a table full of women who thought a country club mattered more than a marriage. I folded the veil carefully. I said nothing. Some answers come when they are ready. 2 weeks later, I called my mother about David. I had rehearsed it in the car. Name first. Then how we met. Then how long we had been together. Then the proposal. Then the answer. I thought if I built it properly like a structure, she might not attack the foundation. I was wrong. David and I met on a municipal waterline project. His crew was laying pipe below an overpass. I was inspecting load-bearing calculations above it. He had been standing in a trench in steel-toed boots, reading a spec sheet while everyone around him shouted over machinery. Then he looked up at me and asked whether the beam tolerances accounted for thermal expansion. I remember staring at him. Not many pipe fitters ask structural engineers about thermal expansion. That was the first thing I noticed. The second was that he listened to my answer. Not nodded while waiting to talk. Listened. Really listened. I told my mother his name. I told her we had been together 16 months. I told her he proposed on a Sunday morning over coffee. No performance. No audience. No ring box hidden in dessert. Just David standing barefoot in my kitchen, holding a chipped mug, asking me if I would build the rest of my life with him. I said yes before he finished the sentence. My mother didn't ask how he proposed. She didn't ask if I loved him. She didn't ask if he loved me. She asked what he did. And when I answered, she heard exactly one word. Plumber. The rest vanished. Business owner. Infrastructure. Municipal contracts. Crews. Water systems. None of it reached her. She heard plumber. And in her world, that word carried dirt. After she hung up, I called back. My sister answered. Not my mother. Lillian. Mom can't talk right now, she said. I heard the television in the background. No emergency. No tears. No crisis. Just avoidance. She's upset, Clara. I stood still in my kitchen. Why are you answering her phone? Lillian sighed. That polished older sister sigh. The one that meant she had already agreed with my mother before hearing my side. Honestly, I don't blame her. I stared at the wall. You haven't even met David. I don't need to. Her voice was smooth. Casual. Deadly. Clara a plumber? There it was again. The word. The verdict. I asked if she would come to the wedding. She gave one short laugh through her nose. I'll call you back. She didn't. Not for 6 days. When Lillian finally called, I was at my desk reviewing load specs. Steel columns. Wind pressure. Concrete tolerances. Things that hold because math tells the truth whether people like it or not. She didn't say hello. Mom's not coming. I set my pen down. And honestly, Clara, I'd rather miss my own funeral than watch you do this. I looked at my computer screen. The numbers stayed where they were. My sister's words did not. Have you met him? No. Have you asked anything about him? Silence. His work? His character? Where he grew up? What he cares about? I don't need to. I closed my eyes. I know what a plumber is. That was when I hung up. For the first time in 35 years, I ended a call with my sister. My hand shook afterward. Not from fear. From the strange shock of doing something I should have done years earlier. That evening, I drove to David's house. 3 bedrooms. No morgue. Quiet street south of the city. Nothing flashy. Nothing staged. The furniture was solid. The walls were clean. His work boots were beside the back door. A stack of trade journals sat on the fireplace mantel next to a framed photo of his crew. Between them was a small brass pipe coupling. Old. Dull. About the size of a fist. I had seen it before but never asked. That night I picked it up. It was heavier than it looked. What's this one? David was at the counter slicing bread. He didn't look up. First thing I ever fixed that held. I turned it in my hands. The metal was worn smooth on one side. A crawl space in a duplex on Route 11, he said. I was 19. The homeowner had pipes leaking under her kitchen for 4 months. 3 guys came before me. Patched it. Left. It leaked again every time. He placed the knife down. I didn't know enough to be scared, so I tore the whole joint apart and rebuilt it. How long did it take? 6 hours. He looked up then. It held. No bragging. No performance. Just a fact. The kind of fact that stays because it doesn't need applause. I set the coupling back on the mantel. And I did not ask how big his company was. It didn't feel like the right question. Not yet. My Aunt Ruby was the one who explained my mother to me. Ruby was my mother's younger sister. 66. Retired school nurse. A bungalow. A porch swing. No pretensiones. She drove up the Saturday after I told the family. She sat at my kitchen table and drank 2 cups of black coffee before saying a word. Then she told me the story I had only heard in pieces. When I was 7 and Lillian was 10, my father left. Not slowly. Not honestly. Not with family counseling or separation language. One Thursday he ate dinner with us. The next he was living in a condo on the east side of town with a woman named Patricia who owned a chain of dry cleaners and a lakefront house. Ruby said the town was not kind. My mother's friends whispered. The garden club went quiet when she walked in. One woman at church asked if Diana had seen it coming. Ruby's voice dropped. Your mother spent 7 years being the woman everyone felt sorry for. She wrapped both hands around her mug. She swore on your grandmother's grave that her girls would never be looked down on again. I sat back. Lillian's wedding flashed in my head. The orchids. The country club. The Riverdale Register article. The 7-tier cake. My mother's smile in every photo. Ruby nodded like she saw me putting it together. Lillian's wedding was her proof. She was saying, we made it. We're not the ones you pity anymore. Then Ruby looked at me. Now you're marrying a man who works with his hands. And to your mother, that is not a man. She paused. That is the whole town laughing at her all over again. I understood it then. Not forgave. Understood. My mother was not protecting me. She was protecting the version of herself she had built out of tablecloths, invitations, and social proof. And I was the crack she could not afford to let show. I sent the wedding invitation into the Monroe family group chat on a Wednesday afternoon. Cream cardstock. Simple fond. No gold embossing. No country club crest. Just our names. Claire Monroe and David Holt. The chapel on Sycamore Street. Saturday afternoon. I typed. We'd love to have you there. Delivered. Read by Lillian at 6:12 p.m. Read by my mother at 6:14. Read by Blake at 6:21. No reply. Not a heart. Not a thumbs up. Not a question. Nothing. I watched the chat for 4 hours. Still nothing. The next morning, I opened it again and noticed something stranger. The chat had gone completely silent. That never happened. Normally it pinged 8 or 9 times a day. Lillian's kids. My mother's garden club updates. Holiday plans. Photos of table settings. But after my invitation? Nothing. It was as if they had stopped talking. Or stopped talking where I could see it. I told myself I was being paranoid. Then I went to work. But that silence stayed in my chest like a stone. Round. Heavy. Smooth. Every time I picked up my phone, I felt it shift. I didn't know yet what they were saying in the other chat. I would find out at the worst possible moment. Across from my mother. With a fork in my hand. And my sister's phone glowing on the table. Blake Pierce was the kind of man who introduced himself by his company name. Blake Pierce. Pierce Builders. At barbecues. At children's birthdays. At the grocery store if someone paused too long near the tomatoes. He ran a mid-size commercial contracting firm. Strip malls. Office park renovations. Tenant build-outs. He wore the company like a medal that said he had moved past trades into business. 4 months before the wedding, Lillian hosted a dinner and made a point of inviting me. So we can talk like adults, she said. Which meant Blake would talk. And I would listen. David was not invited. Of course. Blake waited until the main course. He leaned back with a glass of wine he couldn't quite afford and said, Look, Clara, I get it. I put down my fork. Trades are fine. He waved one hand. Somebody's got to unclog toilets. Lillian laughed lightly. Too lightly. Blake. He smirked. But there's a difference between the guys who swing wrenches and the guys who sign the checks, you know? He looked at David's empty chair. Like the absence proved his point. I'm just saying it's not about money. Then he said the word my family loved. Trajectory. I watched him. Press shirt. Expensive watch. Tired eyes. A man explaining success while standing 3 bad months away from a cash flow crisis. What Blake did not mention was that Pierce Builders had lost 2 major bids that quarter. What he did not mention was the credit line he had extended twice. What he did not mention was the equipment loan coming due in 62 days. I knew because I worked in construction. Not his lane exactly, but close enough. The world is smaller than people like Blake think. Contractors talk. Engineers hear things. And the man explaining the difference between wrenches and checks was close to needing someone with a much larger operation to throw him a subcontract. He just didn't know whose operation that would be. Not yet. A few weeks after the engagement, my mother called again. No congratulations. No curiosity. No apology. She opened with a suggestion. When people ask what he does, you could say he's in infrastructure engineering. I was sitting in my car in a job site parking lot, eating a granola bar over a stack of marked-up plans. I stopped chewing. No. She didn't pause. Clara, I'm trying to help you. No, you're trying to rename him. You don't know what people say. I looked through the windshield at a crane moving slowly against the gray sky. I hear it, she said. At the salon. At book club. Diana's younger one is marrying a plumber. Do you know what that does to me? Yes. The answer left my mouth before I could soften it. It does the same thing Dad leaving did. It makes you feel seen in a way you hate. The silence on the line could have frozen a river. Then her voice came back cold. I will not have this family disgraced twice. There it was again. Disgrace. Same weapon. Same target. Same wound under it. She wanted me to sand the truth down until it fit in her display case. Infrastructure engineering instead of pipe fitter. Company owner instead of plumber. A title she could say at book club without tightening her jaw. I told her I would not lie about the man I was marrying. She said I was being selfish. I said I would rather be selfish than ashamed of a man who had never done anything to earn shame. She hung up. The call lasted 6 minutes. When I returned to the site, one of the foremen asked if I was all right. I said yes. I wasn't sure that was true, but I knew I was closer to all right than I would have been if I had said yes to my mother. Spring moved on. Lillian posted vacation photos from Hilton Head. Beachfront rental. Matching outfits. Children barefoot in white linen. Captions like, blessed. Making memories. Pierce family adventures. I scrolled past them like advertisements for a life I did not want. Pretty. Expensive. Someone else's. But I noticed the cracks behind the filter. A subcontractor I knew mentioned Pierce Builders had been slowing invoices. Another said Blake had bid aggressively on a county library renovation and lost to a firm half his size. At Lillian's Easter brunch, which I attended alone because David was not invited and we all knew it, Blake cornered me by the kitchen island. Big things coming, he said. Ice clinked in his glass. I've got my eye on a state contract. I raised an eyebrow. Water treatment facility expansion. He said it loudly. The way a man announces he is about to buy a boat while hoping nobody asks for bank statements. I nodded. I did not mention that water treatment facility expansions were exactly the kind of project David's company had been doing for 17 years. I did not mention that the contract would require bonding capacity Blake almost certainly did not have. I simply said, "Good luck with it, Blake." Lillian appeared at his elbow with fresh lip gloss and redirected the conversation toward a kitchen renovation she was planning. Italian tile. Custom cabinetry. A number that made my teeth hurt. On the drive home, I remembered the credit card I had watched get declined at lunch the month before. The waiter had brought it back with an apology. Lillian had laughed too loudly and reached for another card. Italian tile. Sure. David told me his full story on a quiet Sunday evening. We were on the back porch. 2 beers. Early spring peepers singing somewhere in the dark. He had grown up in Kingston, Ohio. A town so small the gas station was also the post office. His father drove a delivery truck. His mother worked in a school cafeteria. No college fund. No family business. No safety net. At 19, he answered a newspaper ad for a pipe fitter's apprentice. His first 5 months were spent crawling through basements and crawl spaces so tight he had to turn sideways. I slept in my car for 8 weeks, he said. Saved enough for a room. He took a sip of beer. Then tools. Another sip. Then enough to hire one guy. He went inside and came back with the brass coupling from the mantel. The metal was dark with age. A green patina along one edge. The duplex on Route 11, he said. Lady had buckets under her sink for 4 months. 3 plumbers came before me. Patch, leave, leak again. He rolled the coupling in his palm. I was 19. Didn't know enough to be scared. He smiled a little. So I tore the whole joint apart and rebuilt it from scratch. How long? 6 hours. And it held. He nodded. 23 years. He set the coupling on the porch rail. Still holding. I picked it up. It was warm from his hand. I knew by then that his company ran water contracts across Ohio and 2 neighboring states. I knew he employed enough people to fill a small auditorium. But David wore success the way he wore work boots. Broken in. Unpolished. Functional. The number on his balance sheet had never once been why I reached for his hand. And that was the difference my mother could not understand. In the weeks before the wedding, David began taking calls after dinner. He would step onto the porch. Voice low. Careful. The tone he used when numbers were large and timelines were tight. Through the screen door, I caught fragments. Multi-state. Federal allocation. The announcement. One evening, he came back inside and sat down with a look I had only seen once before. The look from the day he landed his first municipal contract. Things might get loud soon, he said. I looked up from folding laundry. What does that mean? He shook his head. Not secretive. Cautious. I don't want to jinx it. If it goes through, you'll hear about it. I let it sit. David never made noise before there was something to make noise about. I trusted that. Meanwhile, the local news ran a segment I barely noticed. A reporter stood outside a water treatment plant talking about aging infrastructure across the Midwest. Pipes from the 1950s. Federal modernization money. Public-private partnerships. The question, the reporter said, is which private firms are positioned to handle projects of this scale. I matched socks and glanced up. The segment ended with a statistic. 45% of Ohio's municipal water systems needed upgrades within 7 years. I thought about David on the porch. Multi-state. Federal allocation. Announcement. Something large was moving toward us. Quietly. And the only people who didn't see it coming were the ones who never bothered to look. Blake lost the state contract 2 weeks before the wedding. I heard it through the construction grapevine before Lillian posted a word. Pierce Builders had been passed over for the water treatment expansion he had been chasing for months. The contract went to a firm with better bonding capacity and deeper municipal experience. Blake did not even make the shortlist. That same week, Lillian canceled the kitchen renovation. On Instagram, she called it a design change. A mutual acquaintance told me she returned the Italian tile deposit. Blake took a short-term loan against equipment he still owed money on. The man who had sat across from me explaining the difference between wrenches and checks was now leveraging his wrenches to cover his checks. I did not feel satisfaction. I felt the grim recognition of watching someone's scaffolding begin to sway. You see the bolts missing. You understand the load. And you know they will not ask for help until the structure is already on the ground. Lillian's posts got quieter. Fewer beach photos. Fewer blessed captions. My mother sent one rare text. Blake's having a tough quarter. No details. No questions about my life. No apology. The Monroe family group chat, the one I was still in, stayed silent. The other one, I imagined, was busier than ever. But I had other things on my mind. A wedding in 2 weeks. A guest list shrinking on one side. and a groom spending every evening on the porch talking quietly about something he was not ready to name. The week before the wedding, my mother invited me to lunch. Just me. Girls only, she said. As if excluding David were a tradition, not a verdict. She picked a restaurant in Riverdale. Cloth napkins. Polished glasses. A wine list she had memorized. Lillian was already seated when I arrived. Her phone lay face down beside her bread plate. The screen lit up every few seconds. She kept glancing at it and ignoring it. My mother ordered for the table without asking. Salads. Sparkling water. A tone that said, "We are going to be civilized about this." For 22 minutes, she talked about Lillian's kids, a neighbor's divorce, and a woman at the salon who had gained weight. She did not mention David. She did not mention my wedding. She did not ask about my work. Then she folded her hands. "Clara, I want you to know the door is always open." I waited. "When you're ready to come to your senses, to really come to your senses, we'll be here." I placed my fork down. What does come to your senses mean? She tilted her head. "You know what it means." Lillian looked at her plate. Her phone buzzed again. The screen lit up. A group chat notification. I saw the name at an angle. Monroe family. With a red heart emoji. The phone sat 6 inches from my hand. Then Lillian stood. "I'll be right back." She walked toward the restroom. She left the phone there. Screen still on. Still glowing. I should have looked away. I didn't. What I saw in the next 10 seconds changed every conversation I would ever have with my family. The chat had the same name as the one I was in. Monroe family. Different chat. Different members. My mother. Lillian. Blake. Not me. The preview showed stacked messages. Lillian. She's actually going through with it, lol. My mother. A plumber in front of people. I can't even say it at book club. Blake. Give it 20 months. I'll take that bet. Lillian. Under. Then my mother. We don't even know what he really does. She's throwing away everything I built for this family over a man with a wrench. I set my water glass down carefully. I did not pick up the phone. I did not screenshot it. I didn't need to. Every word had already burned itself into the back of my skull. Sharp. Permanent. 20 months. A bet. A man with a wrench. I waited for the pain to arrive. It did. But not the way I expected. It was not hot. It was cold. Clear. Like reading a blueprint and finally seeing the structural failure you had been searching for. There it was. Load-bearing. Obvious. Not fixable with patching. Lillian returned, picked up her phone without looking at it, and smiled. So what did I miss? My mother laughed. I cut my salad into very small pieces. I finished the meal. I smiled at the correct moments. Then I drove home without turning on the radio. The silence was enough. I told David that night. He was at the kitchen table reviewing project bids. Reading glasses on. Pen tucked behind his ear. I sat across from him and told him about the parallel chat. The bet. The phrase "man with a wrench." My mother saying she didn't even know what he really did. David took off his glasses. He looked at me for a long time. Then he reached across the table and held my hand. He said nothing for 32 seconds. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. "What do you want to do?" I had been asking myself that question since the drive home. Cancel the wedding. Call my mother. Confront Lillian. Explain David again. Explain what he had built. Explain why they were wrong. Every version ended the same way. Me auditioning for people who had already cast me as the disappointment. Nothing, I said. I'm done auditioning for people who already cast me as the understudy. David squeezed my hand. He did not offer to fix it. He did not suggest a letter. He did not tell me they would come around. He just held on. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling and thought about the brass coupling on the mantel. The first thing that held. 23 years. My mother's approval had never held. My sister's loyalty had never held. The things in my life that did hold were the ones I built myself. My career. My apartment. My judgment. The man sleeping beside me. and a brass pipe fitting from a duplex crawl space on Route 11 that a 19-year-old kid had refused to give up on. The wedding was in 8 days. I was going to walk down that aisle even if I walked alone. The wedding was on a Saturday in late April. Small chapel. White walls. Wood pews. Afternoon light through plain glass windows. David's side filled easily. His crew. His business partner Graham. Childhood friends. His mother, who had flown in from Tucson. My side had one person. Aunt Ruby. Front pew. Blue dress. Handkerchief clenched in both hands. Behind her, 14 empty pews. I stood in the back room alone and looked in the mirror. The veil was pinned into my hair. Grandma Faye's veil. Yellowed lace. Tiny initials near the temple. I ran my finger along the hidden line of stitching I had not been able to read at my mother's table. In the brighter light, I could finally make it out. 3 words. Hand-stitched so small they were almost invisible. Choose who stays. That was it. 3 words from a woman who had married a well-digger and never once apologized. I adjusted the pins, smoothed the lace over my shoulders, looked at my face, and decided it was enough. The coordinator knocked. They're ready. I walked down the aisle with no one to give me away. No one to pretend the empty pews didn't matter. Aunt Ruby was crying before I reached the altar. David stood there in the gray suit he had bought that week. When I got close, he leaned in and whispered, "You showed up." I whispered back, "So did you." We said our vows in front of 43 people. Only one shared my last name. The ceremony lasted 24 minutes. It was the best day of my life. And I need to say this here. The people who refuse to show up always have a reason that sounds like you. It never is. If you have ever walked towards something good with an empty chair behind you, you know exactly what I mean. Comment, I walked anyway. Because I did. With lace on my shoulders. 14 empty pews. And no shame. For 5 days after the wedding, there was quiet. David had a water main project in Dayton starting Monday. I had a mixed-use development review Tuesday morning. We celebrated by picking up pizza and eating it on the tailgate of David's 14-year-old truck in the driveway. No champagne. No resort. No stite photographs. Just the 2 of us in the dark with our legs hanging over the edge, and a cardboard box between us. I thought, this is exactly right. A man who wakes before 7. A woman who reads load calculations for fun. A truck older than our relationship. My mother would have hated every second of it. The phone stayed quiet. The group chat stayed dead. And for 5 days, I let myself believe the hardest part was over. Then Tuesday came. 5 days after the wedding. I was standing on the second floor of a half-finished parking structure, reviewing rebar placement with a contractor. My phone started vibrating in my vest pocket. Once, twice, 3 times. Then it became a chain. So fast the phone felt like it was trying to escape. I pulled it out. Text from a college friend. "Is this your David?" Text from a coworker. "Turn on channel 6." Text from my project manager. "Clara, congratulations. Call me." 3 missed calls from numbers I did not recognize. I excused myself, walked to the edge of the structure where the wind was sharp and the noise dropped lower, and opened the news app. The headline loaded. Then the photo. Then the rest of my morning collapsed into one held breath. I knew David's company was successful. I knew about contracts in multiple states. I knew he employed more people than my mother would ever imagine. But this was not the company I thought I understood. This was something else. The man I married had just been named lead partner on a project that put him on every screen in the Midwest. My phone kept buzzing. I gripped the railing with one hand and read the article twice. Not because I didn't understand. Because I needed to make sure I understood the scale. It wasn't a dream. It was Tuesday. And David was on every channel. The Department of Infrastructure had announced a landmark public-private partnership to modernize water systems across 4 Midwestern states. Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, Kentucky. The lead private partner, selected after a 20-month evaluation, was Holt Civil and Water, David's company. The article called it the largest municipal water contract awarded to a private firm in a decade. Aging pipes. 49 communities. Federal allocation. Public-private modernization. The number attached to the contract was so large I will not say it here because the number is not the point. But it was the kind of number that makes people who ignored you suddenly remember your phone number. Then I saw the photo. David standing in the lobby of Holt Civil Headquarters. Behind him, inside a glass display case, mounted on a small wooden base, was the old brass pipe coupling. The one from the mantel. The plaque beneath it read, "The first joint that held. Route 11. 1. I stared at it. The same coupling I had held in my hands. The same coupling my mother would have dismissed as dirty metal. The origin story of the company that had just been handed the infrastructure contract of the decade. My mother's words from the secret chat came back so sharply, I almost heard them aloud. We don't even know what he really does. Well, now everybody did. 99 calls. Not one of them came to the wedding. But all of them could dial fast when his face was on a screen. If you've ever watched silence become a flood the second people thought you had something worth taking, you already know the feeling in my chest. Tell me in the comments. Have you been on the other end of those calls? Because I drove home from that job site with my phone face down on the passenger seat, vibrating so steadily it sounded like something alive trapped under a blanket. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the count was at 99. My mother, Lillian, Blake, Aunt Ruby, whose call I would return, 2 numbers from my mother's garden club, 1 from Blake's brother, who I had met exactly once at Christmas. I opened the Monroe family group chat. Months of silence. Then a waterfall. Lillian, Clara honey call me. My mother. So proud of you both. Always knew David was special. Blake. Just saw the news. Incredible. We should get together. I have some ideas for collaboration. My mother again. Call your mother, please. I scrolled through 19 messages in 92 seconds. Every one of them arrived after 12:49 p.m., the exact minute the news broke. Before that, the last message was my wedding invitation. Read by all. Answered by none. I set the phone on the kitchen counter. The mantel was empty. The coupling was gone now. At Holt headquarters. In a glass case. On every news segment. In its place, David had left a sticky note. Back late. Don't check your voicemail. I love you. I almost laughed. Then I sat at the table where we had eaten pizza out of a box 5 nights earlier. And I let the phone ring. I did not answer a single call. Not because I wasn't angry. I was. But because I already knew what every one of them wanted. And none of it was me. My mother showed up 4 days later. No call. No warning. Just Diana Monroe on my porch in her best blouse, mascara freshly applied, holding a casserole dish like a peace offering. It was raining. So I let her in. She sat on my couch, placed the casserole on the coffee table, looked at the empty spot on the mantel where the coupling had been, and I watched her calculate. Clara, she began. I know things have been difficult. I waited. I know I wasn't perfect about all this. Not wrong. Not cruel. Not absent. Not ashamed. Not sorry. Just not perfect. But you have to understand I was scared for you. I said nothing. I was trying to protect you. Still nothing. I've been thinking. We're family. Family shows up for each other, right? I finally spoke. When exactly did we do that? She blinked. The question landed harder than she expected. Then she pivoted. Smooth. Practiced. Like changing lanes on a highway. Blake's been having a hard time. There it was. Not even disguised well. His company, you know how construction is. Ups and downs. I thought now that David is in such a good position, maybe there's a way for them to work together. She leaned forward. Blake has 22 years of experience. It would be good for everyone. And there it was. The casserole was not an apology. It was an invoice. She had not come because she missed me. She came because her other son-in-law's company was sinking, my husband's face was on television, and she saw a door she could walk through if she held a dish and cried at the right time. I looked at the casserole. Then at her. Did you come here to apologize? Her mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. And that was answer enough. Lillian came next. The following weekend, she texted first. A long message full of words she had not used with me in years. Thinking of you. So happy for you. We should grab coffee. Just us. She signed it with a heart emoji. The same heart emoji from the secret group chat I was never supposed to see. I went anyway. Not because I trusted her. Because sometimes you need to hear the pitch before you know how to decline it. Over coffee, Lillian was warm in a way that felt like wearing a coat cut for someone else. She complimented my hair. Asked about my work for the first time in years. Mentioned how proud she was of David. Then, casual as weather, she said Blake had put together a capabilities packet for Holt Civil. Nothing formal, she said quickly. Just an introduction. His crew does excellent finish work. It could be a great fit for the residential tie-ins. I stirred my coffee. You said you'd rather miss your own funeral than come to my wedding. Lillian flinched. Then recovered. She had always been fast. I was upset, Clara. I didn't mean it. I looked at her. You know how I get. I did know. She got exactly like our mother. Saying whatever would close the sale. Then rewriting the past so the transaction sounded like love. We're family, she said. Family helps family. A few weeks earlier, family was a separate group chat betting 20 months on my marriage while I ate salad across the table. Now family was a capabilities packet, coffee, and a heart emoji deployed with the precision of a marketing campaign. I'll think about it, I said. I would not. But saying it bought time. And time was the only currency I needed. That night, I told David everything. My mother's casserole. Lillian's coffee. Blake's packet. The sudden warmth. The sudden family values. We were on the porch. Fireflies blinked in the yard. David listened without interrupting. When I finished, he sat quietly, letting the words settle. Then he asked the same question he had asked before. What do you want to do? Same tone. Same calm. Same refusal to take control of a choice that belonged to me. I don't know yet, I admitted. Part of me wants to pretend it's fine. Let them back in. Absorb it. He nodded. And the other part? The other part wants them to understand that showing up after the news broke is not the same as showing up at the wedding. David leaned back. The porch light caught the edge of his jaw. He looked tired. Not from the work. From watching me carry this. It's your family, he said. Your call. I'll stand wherever you stand. He didn't say they were wrong. He didn't say they were right. He did not suggest forgiveness. Or revenge. Or strategy. He offered me something my family had almost never offered. The right to decide for myself without someone rewriting the options. I sat with that for 5 days. I went to work. I came home. I ate dinner beside a man who treated every person the same, whether they ran a company or unclogged a drain. And I thought about what it would look like to tell the truth. Not in rage. Not for punishment. Clearly. In front of people. The way you state the load on a beam. This is what it holds. This is what it doesn't. And this is where the failure line sits. The opportunity came 8 weeks after the wedding. A ribbon-cutting ceremony. Holt Civil and Water was launching Phase 1 of the modernization project at a water treatment upgrade site 32 miles south of Riverdale. The event was public. Local press. 3 city council members. The mayor. State representatives. David's team. Community members. Graham organized it. When I saw the guest list, I noticed my mother's name was not on it. Neither was Lillian's. Neither was Blake's. They'll come anyway, I told David. He looked over his reading glasses. You think? I know. I did know. Because the event had been mentioned in the Riverdale Register. Because Blake's company worked in commercial construction in the same county. Because my mother read the Register the way generals read battlefield reports. Diana called Thursday. We'd love to come support you, she said. Voice bright. Public. Like she was already at the event. Lillian texted. Blake would love to say hi to David. Just a quick hello. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. They would come. They would dress up. They would stand near David. They would smile for any camera pointed in their direction. Then, at the right moment, they would ask for something. Access. A contract. A photo. A way to prove they had always been standing on the winning side. They came. Of course they did. My mother in pearls. Lillian in heels too high for a construction site. Blake in a blazer with a Pierce Builders card tucked into his pocket. And I knew exactly what I was going to say. The ribbon cutting was at noon on a Saturday in early June. A cleared lot beside the old treatment facility. A podium. Folding chairs. A red ribbon stretched between two poles. 2 local news stations. The Riverdale Register. Graham stood near the podium checking the microphone. David wore the same gray suit from our wedding. He was speaking with the mayor. Aunt Ruby had driven from her bungalow and sat in the second row in her blue dress. The same one she wore to the wedding. The same handkerchief in her hand. My mother arrived 12 minutes early. She walked through the crowd like she was entering a fundraiser she had chaired. Chin lifted. Smile calibrated. Hand extended to people she had never met. "I'm David's mother-in-law," she told a reporter. "We've always been so proud of him." The reporter wrote something down. I watched my mother's smile. Polished. Public. Empty. Lillian appeared at her elbow. Blake hovered a few steps behind, scanning the crowd for David like a salesman searching for the decision-maker. He found Graham first. I watched him extend a hand, introduce himself, pull a business card from his blazer pocket. Graham took the card, glanced at it, and slipped it into his back pocket without reading it. Lillian positioned herself beside me and looped her arm through mine, a gesture she had not made since her own wedding. "This is amazing, Clara," she said. "You must be so proud." I looked at her arm, then mine. I thought about the secret group chat, the bet, the 20 months, the funeral she would rather attend. I smiled. "Let's find our seats." The ceremony began with the mayor. 5 minutes about infrastructure, public investment, clean water. Then Graham spoke about Holt Civil's history. Then David walked to the podium. For 4 minutes, he spoke about starting as an apprentice. The duplex on Route 11. The coupling that held after 3 others didn't. He did not mention money. He did not mention contract value. He talked about pipes, communities, the people who depend on water without thinking about it until it stops running. The audience clapped. Press cameras clicked. David cut the ribbon with oversized scissors. The crowd cheered. During the reception, with coffee and donuts on a folding table beside project brochures, Blake made his move. He pulled me near the refreshment table. Voice low. Fussed. "Clara, listen. 1 word from you to David. That's all I need." I looked at him. Pierce Builders can handle subcontract work on residential tie-ins. I've got 22 years of experience. "Blake." He leaned closer. "You know this would be good for everyone." I held his gaze. "You called my husband a guy who unclogs toilets." He laughed. Nervous. "Come on. That was just talk." Behind him, my mother had positioned herself beside David for a press photo. She had one hand on his arm, smiling at the camera, the same smile she used in garden club portraits. A reporter nearby turned toward me. Notepad. Recorder. "Mrs. Holt, could I ask you a few questions?" I said yes. She asked how it felt to see David's company recognized at this level. I answered. Then she asked the question that opened the door I had been waiting for. "Did your family always know about the scale of David's work?" I looked at the reporter, then at my mother, still holding David's arm, then at Lillian 3 feet away, phone up recording for Instagram, then at Aunt Ruby in the second row, the one person who came to the wedding, the one person who showed up before cameras did. Then I answered. My family was invited to my wedding. My voice was even, conversational, the same tone I used to explain load calculations. Factual, precise, without heat. One person came. The reporter's pen stopped. My mother's hand loosened on David's arm. My mother told me my husband would disgrace this family. Silence tightened. My sister said she would rather miss her own funeral than attend. Lillian lowered her phone. My brother-in-law explained the difference between men who swing wrenches and men who sign checks. Blake's face changed. Not remorse. Calculation. Fear. None of them asked David a single question about his work. Not one. I paused. People leaned in. Cameras shifted. The quiet gained weight. They heard the word plumber, and heard everything they needed to hear. Then I turned to my mother. She stared at me with an expression I had never seen before. Not anger. Not tears. Not yet. The look of someone realizing the ground beneath her might not be solid. You said a plumber would disgrace this family, I said. So tell me, Mom. I let 6 seconds pass. Which one of us disgraced it? The words settled like a beam dropping into final position. No force. No strength. Just gravity. My mother let go of David's arm. The press photographer lowered his camera. Lillian put her phone down. Blake stepped back. And for 5 seconds, nothing moved. Then Diana Monroe did what Diana Monroe always did when the display case cracked. She tried to rebuild it in real time. Clara, she said. Her voice cracked in the precise, practiced way she used at church luncheons. You don't understand what I went through. Tears appeared. Fast. Too fast. Everything I did was to protect this family. To protect you. She pressed a hand to her chest. The performance was flawless. It would have worked at book club. At the salon. At a table full of people who had not seen the script. But here, in front of a reporter with a recorder, in front of people who watched her arrive 22 minutes earlier introducing herself as a proud mother-in-law, it did not land. It fell flat. I saw it on the faces around us. The recognition. The math people do when the story does not add up. I tried to protect you, she said again, louder now, looking for support in the crowd. No one offered any. Then the mask dropped. Her jaw set. Her eyes hardened. After everything I sacrificed, she said. Her voice no longer performing. Now breaking in the real way. After everything I gave you. And this is how you repay me? In front of cameras? In front of strangers. I did not raise my voice. David chooses his own partners. My mother froze. I won't trade his name for a family that left a chair empty at my wedding. Lillian stepped forward. Opened her mouth. Then stopped. Blake took another half step back. His card still in Graham's back pocket. Aunt Ruby pressed her handkerchief to her mouth. Then nodded once. I turned to Lillian. You said you'd rather miss your funeral. Her eyes filled. You missed my wedding instead. I breathed in. I've made peace with both. My mother turned and walked through the crowd. The people who once pitted her parted without saying a word. I found her outside. Past the reception tent. By the chain-link fence separating the new construction from the old treatment plant. Her hands were shaking. The performance was over. The cameras were inside. Here, in the gravel lot with the smell of turned earth and old concrete, my mother looked exactly as old as she was. 63. Alone. The way she must have looked when my father left with his suitcase and new address. She heard me approach. She did not turn around. I just didn't want you to be looked down on, she said. Her voice was small. Not performing. Not lobbying. Small. The way they looked at me after your father. I couldn't watch them do that to you, Clara. There it was. The real thing beneath the casserole. The pearls, the book club, the country club, the shame. Not cruelty. Fear. A woman humiliated so deeply that she rebuilt her identity around never letting it happen again. And somewhere along the way, she stopped seeing the difference between protecting her daughters and controlling them. I felt it. I let myself feel it. I did not step closer. I know, Mom. She closed her eyes. But somewhere along the way, you became the people who looked down on you. She said nothing. Her lips pressed together. The way they did when she was trying not to cry for real. For one moment. She was just a woman in a parking lot who had lost something she could not name. I stood there for 12 seconds. Then I went back inside. David was near the podium, talking to the mayor about Phase 4 timelines. When he saw me, he excused himself immediately. Not rushed. Just done. He walked over. He did not ask how it went. He could read it on my face the way he read spec sheets. Carefully. Completely. Without needing the summary. He held out his hand. Ready. I took it. His hand was warm. Calloused. Steady. The hand of a man who had spent 22 years turning pipe fittings, contract proposals, and early mornings into something that held. The same hand that held mine when I told him about the secret group chat. The same hand that passed me pizza on a truck tailgate the night we got married. Ready, I said. We walked out together. Past the folding chairs. Past the ribbon scraps. Past the coffee table. Into the June sunlight. Behind us, Aunt Ruby gathered her handkerchief and followed. Ahead of us, the new water line stretched underground toward 49 communities that would have clean water, because a 19-year-old kid once refused to leave a crawl space until the joint held. In the weeks that followed, I built a boundary the way I build anything. Carefully. With clear specifications. No room for ambiguity. I did not cut my mother off entirely. I did not write a public statement. I did not call relatives to explain what happened at the ribbon cutting. I didn't need to. 22 people had been standing within earshot. 3 had camera phones. The story moved without my help. I shifted to low contact. Once a week. 17 minutes. Sunday mornings. One rule. If she mentioned David's company, the call ended. It took 6 Sundays for her to stop testing it. Lillian and I exchanged texts infrequently. She never mentioned the ribbon cutting. She never acknowledged the secret group chat. Or the bet. Or the funeral line. But she stopped asking about Blake's business opportunities. Which was its own kind of admission. Blake did not get the subcontract. Not because David blocked him. David never even knew Blake had pitched it. Graham filed the card and moved on. Pierce Builders did not meet the bonding requirements. The same bonding gap that cost Blake the water treatment contract before the wedding cost him again. This time there was no one to blame but the math. The Riverdale Register ran a small feature on the modernization project the following month. My mother's name did not appear. David's did. Mine did too. Clara Holt, project engineer. A sidebar on women in infrastructure. The reporter from the ribbon cutting had looked me up and found I had been engineering structures since I was 26. I earned that sidebar on my own resume. That mattered more than any reflected glory. On a quiet July evening, I sat on the porch with David and the cedar box that held Grandma Faye's veil. I unfolded the lace. Traced the stitching near the temple one more time. Choose who stays. Faye Monroe had married a well-digger. She knew exactly what she was doing when she stitched those words into a wedding veil, and left them for whichever granddaughter was brave enough to need them. On the mantel, in the empty spot where the brass coupling had once lived, David had placed a new frame. A wedding photo. Aunt Ruby crying in the front pew. Me at the altar. Veil pinned. Smiling. David in his gray suit. Whispering. The one person who shared my last name. And the one person who was about to. That was my family now. Not the one I was born into. The one I chose. And the one that chose me back. Here is the only thing I know for certain after 35 years. People who measure you by a business card will never understand the ones who would hold your ladder at 4 in the morning. So stop handing your worth to anyone who only shows up when the cameras do. That is my story. One empty side of a room. One veil my grandmother left me. One brass coupling that held. And 99 calls that came 5 days too late. If this reminded you that the right person shows up before they know what you are worth, hold on to them. And if someone you love needs to hear that, share it with them. Because the ones who stay before the announcement are the only ones who deserve to stand beside you after it.